Hey, so I really need to talk about something, so let's just talk about it. Today the United States struck a deal with Iran, but it wasn't a direct deal between the United States and Iran. The group that we made this deal under the guise of is called the 5+1, and that's because it used to be a group of 6 countries, and Russia started acting up. We didn't like it, so we removed them, but we added them. So instead of a 6, we did a 6 minus 1 plus 1. So now we're the 5+1. So that's the group that worked together to make this deal with Iran, and I think that group included European countries, Russia, Russia's in Europe. But the point is that the United States has been borderline bullying the country of Iran for, 10, 15 years. I've made at least one video that I can recall where I go over in detail what the sanctions are that we've put on the nation of Iran. Sanctions, if you don't know much about those, are a type of punishment. Politicians will often use the word pressure when they refer to sanctions, but in reality what sanctions are is a punishment meant to cripple the economy of a country that's offending you in some way. It could be a way that's legitimately offensive and should be stopped, or it could be, something silly. But a country as powerful as the United States is able to inflict sanctions on whatever country they want and severely injure their economy. And we've done it many, many times. I truly have never seen it work the way we think it's going to work, ever. And I want to make that clear now, because I could be completely wrong. But as far as I know, and I've looked this up a lot of times, I think I've Googled the phrase, do sanctions work, 50 times. I don't know, a lot of times. And I never come out saying, yeah, they've worked before. So I think that the real definition of sanctions working. Sanctions are the limit on trade. So, for example, we've had sanctions with Iran for 10 plus years where we have prohibited American companies from doing any kind of trade with anyone who might have ties to the oil industry of Iran, the military industry of Iran, the finance industry of Iran. We've been trying to cripple their economy because they did something that offended us, and that thing was they have nuclear centrifuges, they have nuclear plants, and for a long time the world has suspected that they are working on a nuclear weapon. And that scares a lot of people, but it especially scares Israel, because there have been many leaders in Iran who have yearned for the destruction of Israel, and they've made that very clear. Now, Ahmadinejad is no longer the leader, the prime minister at least, of Iran. They have a new one, and he's a little bit reformative, and I think we forget that a lot, especially in Congress. I never get to hear about how this new guy's so much better than the villain we left behind. Also, for the record, I really think it's fair for me to mention that I've seen every major news company in America distort interviews, distort what world leaders say to fit a narrative, and that's kind of fucked up. But who I really trusted up till this happened was CBS. You never hear about CBS when people are listing, the news organizations that lie all the time, which is almost all of them. But you know what? Not even CBS is exempt. The reason I know that is because there was an interview on CBS with Ahmadinejad, the former leader of Iran, the guy that we're all supposed to hate. And it's okay if you do, you're supposed to, but C-SPAN demanded the original footage unedited. And I much prefer C-SPAN to any news outlet because it hasn't gone through any filters, and I prefer to be my own filter. And it's totally fine if you don't, because there are people in this world who are born to be filters of news and people who aren't. I'm definitely a person who's supposed to watch raw data on C-SPAN and turn it into weird YouTube videos in my kitchen. So, there was an interview with Ahmadinejad where, if you watched it on CBS, a lot of people watched it, you might have seen it, where he claims the Holocaust never happened. He says he hates Jews. He says Israel should be destroyed. He's never recognized it as a state. But I didn't see it on CBS first. I saw it on C-SPAN first in its completely unedited raw footage form. And he actually never said any of the things I just said he said. He actually never even... He knew that he was talking to an American journalist, and he knew that it would have sounded, even if he does believe the Holocaust didn't happen. He didn't say that. But CBS took the liberty of editing it to make it look exactly like he said that, which is a little disturbing. So yeah, after after that, I started to really look into Iran, and I was like, what should I feel about Iran? Should I really consider them, as scary as North Korea, but with an offensive side that's looking to nuke Israel? Because that's everybody's greatest fear. Let's just say it, okay? Everyone's scared that Iran's going to nuke Israel. Everyone's scared that some powerful sectarian group in the Middle East is going to pop up and just bomb the shit out of Israel, because a lot of people in the Middle East don't think Israel should exist. I think they're wrong, but I think that the extremes we go to show our support for Israel are a little ridiculous. I really mean that. And I really think that the extremes that we go to separate ourselves from countries that might have terrorists within them, and I don't think Iran does. I think that that's a little ridiculous too. I think we purposely try and safeguard ourselves. I think it's the most wimpy thing for a government to do, to take an extreme stance to prove something. If you really want to prove something, walk the fucking walk. And that's all you gotta do. But I mean, governments get nervous. They're afraid people like us don't understand, We do, though. So, this deal with Iran essentially removes the sanctions, which is actually a freaking good thing, because the sanctions were abusive. We create sanctions against other countries, and in fact, let me really quickly go over the details of these sanctions. So we weren't allowed to do business with any of the aforementioned sectors that I mentioned, but also it ended up becoming so widespread. The United States is really, really aggressive at prosecuting groups that may have had some involvement with somebody who might have been tied to one of those sectors, which, honestly, 6 degrees of separation, that's everybody in Iran. So it got so bad. I read an article today that a woman walked into an Apple store talking to her dad on the phone in Farsi, the language of Iran. The Apple Store employee asked her what language she was speaking. She said, "Oh, I'm from Iran, that's Farsi." And he said, "I can't sell this iPad to you," which is completely false. But the fact that somebody even said that, that's how far our sanctions have bled into everyday life for people whose last name is Iranian. That's how far our sanctions have bled into the economy of a people who had nothing to do with the decisions of their government. People that were born into a nation that might be a shitty nation, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But I know they have a lot of really serious problems. Iran is just absolutely torn up over the issues they have. They murder their prisoners. They disappear people. They really do those things. But the people, the citizens, are not the goddamn 1984-esque news speakers who tell on their neighbors. For the most part, they just want to live a normal life. And our sanctions were preventing them from doing that. Their airplanes were Boeings, okay? Their domestic travel, every country, no matter what you think of them, or, they're in the Middle East, they don't need airplanes. They do. Iran's a pretty huge country. And what happened was the United States, Boeing is an American company, and they weren't allowed to sell parts to Iran to fix their airplanes. So air travel has been really horrible because the airplanes are breaking, and there's nothing they can do about it except, try and figure it out. Iran's always had open trade with China, so they had to start buying Chinese cars because they couldn't buy American cars anymore. And those cars fell apart, and people died. A lot of people died. Accidents were prevalent, and everyone recognized we have to drive these shitty Chinese knockoff cars. And for 10 plus years, people have just kind of gotten used to the fact that they can't have anything from America. And we produce a lot of stuff, and we give it to almost everybody else. Medicines for AIDS and cancer, absolutely unheard of, because we cut ourselves off from that. And we did this to punish some of their leaders who looked like they might want to make nuclear weapons. And I may be understating that. And if I am, I'll apologize. And I really will read more up on it. But I will tell you this. Those sanctions had much, much more of a detrimental effect on the citizens who had nothing to do with the things we were mad about than they did on the government. Because you know what governments are really good at? Cheating and lying and stealing. Our government's the best, but a lot of other governments can compete. And the Iranian government, they found ways to take back routes into our financial system, and they were doing pretty well. The rich people of Iran had back doors ready, and they were ready to just deal with the sanctions. It's the middle class and the poor people who are almost completely made up of people who used to be middle class before this bullshit started, who are suffering under this. And this is something, today I heard the current Prime Minister of Iran call it an avoidable crisis. And unnecessary crisis. That's what he said, you know, in his language, which I don't speak. But it was translated to an unnecessary crisis, and I think that's a little dramatic because there were reasons we did it, but what a misguided thing for us to do. I think sanctions are ineffective, they're abusive, and frankly, they're a bullying tactic. We call it putting pressure. In what way is bullying not the exact same definition of putting pressure on a group or a person to do what you want them to do? The point is, it was really messed up what we were doing to those people. The United Nations stepped in a couple times. European countries had a little bit to say about how aggressive we were being with these sanctions, and it was clear that they weren't working. And you will have a plethora of politicians stand up in Congress and tell you right now that they were working. And they have absolutely no data to back that up, but when was the last time you heard a politician say something that sounds really detailed and smart about something you know nothing about and you went to your computer to look it up? It does not happen that often because we have busy lives and Game of Thrones is on, and it's fine. It's fine because I'll read it and I'll go look it up and I'll tell you in this weird video, which is really, really long, and I hope that's alright. I don't think I'm going to edit this video very much, but I wanted to tell you that today we lifted the sanctions from Iran, and President Obama did this to cement his legacy as the president who went against the grain and did a thing that we needed to do. And I don't love everything that President Obama does. In fact, I disagree with a lot of it. I still think this was the right decision to make, and it's not like he made it on his own. There were 5+1 countries involved in this decision. Fuck you, Russia. I think we were a little unfair to that country too, but they're still assholes. Point is, welcome, Iran. Welcome to our world economy. Welcome to leaving poverty. Welcome to retro antiviral medications to curb your HIV so that it doesn't become full-blown AIDS. Welcome to $2 gas, America. It's coming back because now we get to have oil from the country with the second largest oil reserve in the world. I think good things are going to happen because of this deal, and I'm not afraid of it. And you're about to hear a lot of politicians tell you how scared you should be. And I want you to remember, you might disagree with me completely, and that's okay. But if you are on board with what I'm saying, do not let this upset you. This is the way it needs to go. America needs to stop using sanctions as a weapon. Since when is it okay to use abusing the poor people of a country whose government you're mad at? Since when is that the best way to get what you want in this economy, in this world? It's not. And I think you and I think we know that. And I think that the only way to get representatives that represent us who also agree with that is to pay attention to who we're electing. You know I always get back to this, and I don't even mean to, but I really believe that. We need to have people that represent us who really believe that sanctions are silly, sanctions don't work, sanctions are a form of aggression. And you know what I want? I want some peace, and I want some money dealings, and I want people in Iran to wake up and have a job to go to. And I don't think that's such a terrible thing to want, because people in Iran did nothing to me, and the people in Iran aren't trying to make weapons to kill me or my neighbors or Israel or anybody. When Benjamin Netanyahu gets on the microphone and says, this is a disaster of monstrous proportions that we'll never recover from, Benjamin Netanyahu needs to check his biases. It's okay that he has them. It makes sense that he has them. He's scared of a lot of his neighbors, and sometimes he should be. But recognize your hatred and your fear before you make an overwhelming statement that way too many representatives in this country are going to take as law. I think that's it. Hope this wasn't too long, and I hope it was somewhat interesting for you to listen to, because I feel really strongly about this. I was not intending to make a video today. I probably don't look that great, but whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is this. I hope I shed some light on the situation, and I hope you start to think about things like this, because, I don't know, it makes us look better when we know what we're talking about. Have a good one.